Good morning. This mug has gotten a lot of use this week. It's actually just barely morning. It's like 11:30 my time, but I finally got my act together to start filming. Welcome. I'm Melinda. This is a web of stories. This is my weekly wrap up. This is dropping on the 14th of September. I'm filming it on the 13th of September, just so you know where I am. Yes, so this is probably not going to be a really long wrap up because I don't have that much to really wrap up this week. This was the first full week of the kids at school and my kids were tired this morning. That whole having to get up and get dressed 5 times in a week, that's hard. Actually 6 because you had church too, but they had that all summer. So yeah, it's hard. And one thing that I'm really working with my son when I was in school, like we had homework. That was a thing that we had starting, I think in 3rd grade was like the official beginning of homework. And, you know, in elementary school, you might have a little bit every night, you might not. It was like hit or miss, but a couple nights a week you would have homework, right? And then middle school, you would have like maybe half an hour to an hour homework night. High school, you would have a significant amount of homework a night. That's like what I grew up with. I don't know what's happened to homework. It's apparently become like persona thing non grata, because my kids never had homework. I mean, all through elementary school, they didn't have homework. My daughter had just a little bit in middle school, just a teensy weensy bit. And in high school, she does have homework. She's actually starting to get a bit more homework, but they've changed the way they do classes in high school. I think this started in the pandemic. So she has 8 classes. Instead of doing 8 classes in one day, which is what I did, I think I had 7 or whatever. I did all my classes in one day when I was in high school. They divide it in half. So they do 4 classes each day and they alternate. And then the classes are like an hour and a half long, which is, I think, good. It does, depending on the teacher and the class, it gives her time to work on her homework at school. So she does have probably a substantial amount of homework, just not a lot that's getting done at home because of this. I think a lot of teachers are still trying to figure out how to teach for an hour and a half in high school, which I understand. If you've done your whole career teaching, having 45-minute classes, and now you have hour and a half classes, that's a big adjustment. And just, I have no opinion on how things are going this year because it's only been a little over a week. Last year, with her teachers last year, it was clear that some teachers had embraced the long class period and some were really struggling with it. But anyway, she didn't have that. She's having more homework this year. And I've never worried about her with homework. She's very self-motivated and she's also very competitive. So she really wants to get good grades. My son, on the other hand, does not have a competitive bone in his body. I don't know how that happened because my husband is like uber competitive. My daughter's competitive. I have a little competitive edge. I'm not nearly as competitive as they are, no matter what they tell you. But my son has no competitive, I mean, nothing. And he's never had homework and it's going to be he's in 8th grade. So he's in the last year of middle school. And next year will be a disaster if we don't get this like taken care of. So I told him, he has one class where he's pretty much going to have a little bit of homework every day. He tested into a higher math class. So there's that. But I basically started now like a homework schedule. When he doesn't have homework, he has to read a book. So all this week he had to read a book. It was a graphic novel I got him called Gamerville. Actually, let me go get it. Okay, I'm back. So this is a book I got him last time I was at Powell's. My daughter was picking up the new Amari book and I was picking up my poetry book to use my bingo coupon. And I picked this up for him and I just thought this would be a perfect graphic novel for him. He does like graphic novels. It's like, you know, there's an attention. He's never been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, but there is some attention span issues there. And I think a lot of it's just because he needs to learn to spend more time on things that aren't video games. But anyway, this is about a kid who plays video games all the time and loves playing video games. And then he gets sent to a summer camp where there's no electronics. So I got this from my son and he read it. He liked it, but he says he doesn't want to keep it, which is fine. So this is going to go into Little Free Libraries, but I am going to look and see if there's another, if any of you are familiar with this author. It looks like he also has a book called Swim Team. So I'm not one for gendered reading. Like, I don't really believe in gendered reading, but with my son, really, I'm just trying to get him to read. So if I do have to dive a little bit into gendered reading just to interest him, I'm willing to do it. And it looks like Swim Team, the protagonist is a girl. So that's, yes, he should be reading that. But really, I just, the struggle right now is getting him to open the page. So I don't know if I'm going to try that one with him. But anyway, this book's going to go into Little Free Library. But he liked it. So, yes. What the deal is, he has to spend half an hour, and there's times depending on what's going on the day, like half an hour doing homework, or as long as it takes to do his homework. So if he has actual homework for school, he has to do it during that time. And if it takes longer than half an hour, he has to finish it. So it's until that finishes it. If he doesn't have homework from school, or he has homework and he does it within half an hour, he needs to use the rest of the time reading. And he has to like sit at the table and read. It's not like go sit on the couch or something like that, because I want his body to kind of get used to that. And just, I've explained this to him. I said, this is just to kind of get into the habit of doing it, because next year you're going to have homework. So that's what we're working on this year. I did also bring a couple other books. These are 2 books that he has that he hasn't read that I just kind of had around. So I pulled out for him to start working on next. This one is Dragons of Introvertia. I think I picked this one up for him because it's like D&D derivative, and he's a huge D&Der. Like, he's not competitive, but he loves D&D because it's a cooperative game. To try to get him to play a game that is competitive is very hard. The only game that he's like really willing to play that's competitive is Marvel Infinity Saga Trivial Pursuit, because he can beat us. He's never actually, when we finished a game, beat me. For some bizarre reason, I've won this game. I don't know why. I should not be the one winning this game, but he doesn't, and part of it is he doesn't like to lose, and his sister is really competitive, so she rubs it in. But he just, we tried putting him in sports, and he was not, all these things, he's just not competitive. But he loves D&D, so I thought, I remember seeing this, like, this is a book for kids who like D&D. So I got this one for him. These are ones I've had for a while. And the other one I got for him, because I think he'd really like it, is the first Alex Ryder book, Stormbreaker, by Anthony Horowitz. Now, I read Anthony Horowitz. I've not read these, but I've read some of his adult fiction. And I think that he's an author my son would really like. So I pulled these 2 books out and I said, okay, when you finish with this one, you can go with this one. So yeah. So in case you're wondering, the schedule is, so he usually gets home from school about 3:30. And I go pick up his sister, and we're home at about 4. So I say, from 3:30 to 4 is your own time. You can do whatever you want. From 4 to 4:30 on Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, you do it 4 to 4:30. On Tuesdays, he has an online D&D game, so he can do it after dinner. And then he just has to do half an hour at some point, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, wherever it fits in. But that's kind of a thing we're working on this year. And my daughter actually has a pretty academically, I don't know if I say strenuous, but it's definitely heavier than last year. Schedule. She's doing, she only has one class. It's not like, I want to say book learning, I guess, where, she has PE, for one semester. But she's taking she's doing an IB pre-calc, which she's ahead. She's tested way above math. So she's doing that, and she's doing US history. My son is also doing US history. So they're both doing US history this year, in 8th and 10th grade, because I don't know if they're changing the middle school curriculum, but they are changing the high school curriculum so that US history is now 9th grade, but the last year's 9th graders didn't have it. So everyone, 9th and 10th grade, is doing US history this year. This is the bane of both my kids' existence. Not because they don't like history, but because they have 2 parents who do. And we've had very long discussions about how geography and, impacts history and all this. And they're like, oh God, please shut up. Please shut up. Like when mom and dad start on this, they're like, oh God, can we leave? But no, they get that, and they're going to get it all year. She has that, and she has, her ELA, but she's also taking psychology and, Spanish. That's something that I have actually kind of insisted on, that they take Spanish in high school, because just to get a job, you need to be multilingual, just to get a job. And we live in an area where there is a large native Spanish speaking population. So it's so much easier to learn a language when you see the language around you. I took French in high school. There aren't a lot of people, French speakers around here. I don't know why. I wanted to take Spanish, but my mother had me take French for reasons I don't understand. But I'm now doing Spanish on Duolingo and Pimsleur. So anyway, she has a much more academically strenuous year this year. So I think it's going to be a good year for both kids. As for me, I am getting back into the schedule of not having them around during the day. I was really bad about going to the gym actually for quite some time because I was dealing with some, we thought it was sciatica, but it's not sciatica sort of thing for a long time. Now I've gotten to the point where I can go to the gym. Problem is when you haven't been to the gym for a while and you go to the gym, it takes a long time to recover. So I kind of hurt my back when I went on Monday. So I'm getting over that. So hopefully we'll get back into that on Monday. But other than that, I'm trying to get back into I have time to do stuff around the house and do all that. Reading, of course, schedule. We're working on it. So speaking of that, we'll get into what I finished this week. I finished 3 books, but I can only tell you about 2 because one was my final BookTube prize book. So today I'm going to be filming a lot of videos. So this is the first day of mid-month book bash. So I'm going to start that vlog. I have a tag for next week, but I also have finished all my BookTube prize books. So today, after I film this, I'm going to film my BookTube prize wrap-up video, which will go out. I'm going to schedule it for 10 a.m. my time, Pacific Standard Time, on October 1st, because at that point, the results will have been announced. So if you're interested to know what I thought of this book I'm not telling you about, tune in on October 1st. You will already know who had won. So the other 2 books that I finished were both read-alongs, actually. The first one was Fire Exit by Morgan Talty, and I read this with Angelia at Read and Reread. So I had recently read his first work, which is a short story collection called Knight of the Living Res, which I liked, but I didn't love it to the point that I thought I would after everything I had heard about it. And my issue with it, which is a very personal to me issue, but my issue was I felt it should have been a novel. And now here's the novel. So I actually really enjoyed this book as much as you can enjoy such a sad book. This is a very sad, it's not like super sad things happen in the book. It's just, there's a prevailing sense of sadness with it. It's still very much worth reading, and it is set in the same world as Knight of the Living Res. There are things that happen in Knight of the Living Res that are referenced in here. And I'm sure there are things that happen in here that are sort of kind of referenced in Knight of the Living Res. I am going to reread Knight of the Living Res. Angelia has also read it at least once. I think she's read it once and then read some of the stories additional times. She was much quicker to pick up on those things than I was. So I think I am going to kind of designate Knight of the Living Res maybe for December, for Remember December, because this will still be pretty fresh in my mind, and that's a reread, so that would work. But this story follows Charles. So Charles was raised on the Penobscot reservation in Maine because his mother had married into it. However, Charles is not Penobscot. So once he came of age, he had to leave the reservation. None of this is a spoiler. And it starts, he has a house right on the outside of the reservation that looks in over a river at another house that's in the reservation. And the reason he has that house and the reason he's so interested in the house that's across the river is because his daughter lives there. Now, his daughter does not know she's his daughter, or lived there. She's an adult now, but the daughter didn't know, had never been told that the person who she grew up with, what's this guy named Roger, was not her father, who is Penobscot. So this has a lot of issues with identity, because in a lot of ways, Charles identifies with the indigenous tribe because that's how he was raised, and he had a close relationship with his stepfather, who was Penobscot. So there's a lot of this. His mother, who is not Penobscot, is still living on the reservation because she had married in. So there's a lot of questions about identity and memory. One thing that both Angelia and I had kind of a little, it wasn't, I wouldn't say a hard time, but it hit us both, was that Charles's mother is suffering from dementia. And we have both gone through that. My mother suffered from dementia, Angelia's mother and mother-in-law. So it's done really well. Let's just say that. We both like, ooh, he knows of what he speaks reading that. So if that's something that you've dealt with and maybe it's something you don't really want to visit or you aren't ready to visit, just keep that in mind about this book, because I think that is actually a really important one. When I put this in on Storygraph, I usually just put all of my trigger warning things under moderate, because I don't know what's the difference between mild and moderate and graphic, whatever. But I did put dementia in under graphic because I do think that it's written so well that if you have dealt with that in your life and it is still something that you are still dealing with, you need to take care with this book. But I really enjoyed it. Not a completely perfect book for me. I will say there were some things that happened in this book that I think should have been addressed. I'm not going to go into what they were because it'd be a little spoilery, but I'm just like, what that thing happened. You ever heard of Chekhov and his gun thing, sort of? That's, the gun's still hanging on the wall. Sort of thing in there. Nothing, those are kind of minor quibbles on my part, but yeah, I really thought this was really good. Angelia probably is still more on the Night of the Living Res side, which is fine. I mean, everyone has their own experience with books, but I do want to reread Night of the Living Res now that I have read this, and I think that it probably will be a more successful book for me on a reread, but this one was quite good. And the second book that I finished that I can tell you about was a reread with Mariandria at Books and Bocadillos, and that is The Pearl by John Steinbeck. And this was a Shorty September book. So Shorty September, I should have said this too. Shorty September, there's a question like, what is a shorty? And I am going by the definition that at least Heidi at My Reading Life has said, which is 250 pages or less. This is also a shorty. This is 235 pages. So it's just under there. So we'll count that for Shorty September too. But The Pearl is like 90 something pages according to Goodreads. I had a Kobo copy of it, so I just clicked. But this is a classic, and it's a parable, the Pearl of Great Price parable, which is from the Bible? No, that's the gem of, I should know this. I teach Sunday school. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So nothing that happened in this book was surprising, but it's still a very emotionally gutting book. And I think this was a 5-star book for me, by the way. I should say that out, 5-star. I think everything I've read from John Steinbeck, this is my third John Steinbeck, has been 5 stars. So I am a Steinbeck girl. I really want to read that werewolf book. I am not someone who I always feel really uncomfortable when like an author dies and that book they had that they didn't want published gets published. I'm really uncomfortable with that, the whole Harper Lee thing. And normally I'd be like, oh, I don't want to read that because the author didn't want to publish, but I don't care. I want the werewolf John Steinbeck novel that no one is supposed to see. We know it exists. I just want to read it. No one is supposed to read it. It's hidden in some university library somewhere, like under lock and key, and no one is supposed to see it. We just know it exists. Anyway, The Pearl. The writing in this was so beautiful and so evocative. It's very spare. As I say, it's like 90 pages, I think, in print. And the story is one that you kind of know where the story is going to go. It says right in the beginning, it's a parable. So you know this story. You know it. It's fine. I mean, that's the setup for it. It's fine. But it's just, oh man, the writing just took my breath away. So well done. I don't know why I do know why I haven't read this. If I've talked a little bit about this before, but my senior year in high school, I had a choice of one of two English classes. And my schedule was such that I could only take one of two. I think I might have, if I really wanted to, could have dropped something and taken both, but that would have been a lot of work. Whatever. But I could either take AP English, where, it's AP English, and then you take the AP exam, and if you score well enough, you get college credit. Or I could take college writing, where I was guaranteed college credit. I took college writing. I regret that decision, honestly. In retrospect, for various reasons, I regret that decision. But had I taken AP, I think I would have read The Pearl in that class. I think that was one of the books that they read in it. So yeah, that's why I haven't hadn't read it in school. But I think it's a really good, John Steinbeck is a very, I think he is a very important writer for American literature. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that point. But he can be a little intimidating, I think. And I think The Pearl is a really great entry point because a short, that doesn't mean, Steinbeck has written other short things that people say are intimidating, which I still am going to read. I have them. I have not read Of Mice and Men yet, but I will at some point. I don't know when. But I think because of what The Pearl is, just because it's a parable, everyone knows kind of what's going to happen, what the message of the book is. It says that there's a little forward in it that basically tells you that, you know what's going to happen here. That element of trying to guess the plot, know what's happening in the plot, that's not there. So it allows you to focus on other things in the book. I think this is a great entry point to John Steinbeck. If you've never read John Steinbeck, The Pearl is a good thing. Also, and this is totally me, I always like it when I can make little connections with things. The main character in The Pearl is named Kino, and they even reference this in the book. But if you don't know, my father currently lives outside of Tucson, Arizona, and we go down every spring break. And this year we're also going at New Year's, and I hope not to bring that one souvenir back that I brought last time. Anyway, one of the things that's near him is Tumacacari National Historic Site, which is an old mission that was started by this guy named Father Kino, who's known of like planting all these missions he's a Jesuit, along the Southwest. And so there's a little museum, there's a statue of Father Kino and all this. So they even reference that Kino, oh, you're named after Father Kino. And I was like, I know that. That's a connection. Whoa. So yes. So I really loved The Pearl. I thought it was gorgeous. Anyway, those are 2 of the 3 books I finished this week, and tune in on October 1st to know what that third one is. As for what I'm reading now, I'm not going to list it. It's all listed down below. The big thing is I'm doing this read along of A Prayer of Owen Meany by John Irving, which I read a long, long time ago. I read it after I had seen the movie version, which is a very loose adaptation. In fact, the character isn't even called Owen Meany. It's Simon Birch is the movie. And I think like 2/3 of the book is also cut out of it. But I'm rereading it and I'm enjoying it. But I also think it's the bite that was too much for me this month. But I'm going to stick with it. But it is kind of like putting a little pressure on my reading right now because I have some things that I do have to read. But we're going to work through it. It's going to be fine. I have something come up this weekend, but you will see what it is in my mid-month book bash vlog. And as for things that are coming up, so next Tuesday, I will have a tag. I'm not sure if I'm doing a Wednesday with Will or Friday reads next week. It really depends on if I get a chance to read 12th Night this weekend, because that's my last thing. I just haven't had a chance to read it yet. Because I'm feeling a little pressure with my reading this month. But I'm going to do a tag on Tuesday, and on Thursday will be my mid-month book bash vlog, and then we'll see what happens on Wednesday or Friday. So, and then we're getting starting to get to the end of September already. Oh my goodness. I don't know. Anyway, I'm starting to babble, so we will cut it off there. Like, subscribe, join my Discord. Tell me what is your main reading book right now. If you're like me and you have a bunch of books, what's the main book you're reading right now? And tell me down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.